Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to Spontaneous Remarks, the podcast where you never know what's going to happen, what's going to be said, or what's going to be done. You just got to know what we are talking about tonight. So tonight, we are going to be talking about, well, ain't no telling because I ain't got my app pulled up yet. Spin the wheel of Nerdville. Okie dokie. We only have a few more subjects to go, so let's see what we're going to do. Alright, guys. Well, this episode is going to be about those crazy, wacky movies that were made and put out in weird order, starting with 4, 5, and 6. Then 1, 2, and 3. And then 7, 8, and 9. Why he put them out in this order, I don't know. But we're going to be talking about Star Wars. Woo! Alright, well, welcome back, guys, to Spontaneous Remarks, my little remarkables. Thank you so much for joining me. So, this is a very deep subject, a very deep, yes, very deep. We're going to talk about Star Wars. Now, more importantly, we're going to talk about the original trilogy, 4, 5, and 6. George Lucas come up with this. They come out A New Hope, Star Wars A New Hope, which at the time was just known as Star Wars, come out in 1977. Now, Star Wars, that was before I was born. I was born in 1980. But the original Star Wars trilogy is one of the most iconic and influential series in the history of cinema. Now, like I said, it consists of 3 films. It was Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, 1977. This was initially just released simply as Star Wars. Now, this film introduces the universe of Star Wars, including characters like Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, and Darth Vader. The story follows Luke as he joins the Rebel Alliance to destroy the Death Star, which was a massive space station built by the evil Galactic Empire. Then it was followed by Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. In 1980. This movie was the very first one. My sister, she used to take me to all kinds of movies growing up. That was kind of our times that we had, we spent together. She'd take me to the movies, and this was the very first one I saw. Now, like I said, I was born in 1980, and I don't know how the movies come out back then or how long they stayed in theaters, but if I remember right, she said I was 2 when they went, or when we went to the movies. What are you doing? Why couldn't you come in the back door like you did? Oh, okay. Anyway, this was the movie that my sister took me to see. I was 2, I guess, and she said she gave me a Hershey bar, a Hershey candy bar, and I had it all over me by the time that movie was over. But anyway, episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, was widely considered one of the greatest sequels ever made. This film deepens the story that was introduced in A New Hope. The Rebel Alliance faces a new challenge as the Darth Vader relentlessly pursues them. The film is notable for its darker tone and shocking revelation. Spoiler alert, which I'm sure if you're listening to this, you probably know this by now, that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. No! Anyway, Episode 5, Star Wars Episode 5, Return of the Jedi, was come out in 1983, which was the final film of the original trilogy. Return of the Jedi, and it concludes the storyline of the struggle between the Rebel Alliance and the Galactic Empire. Luke confronts Darth Vader and the Emperor, and while his friends attempt to destroy the second Death Star, The key events include the redemption of Darth Vader and the victory of the Rebel Alliance. So I kind of just told you what all three movies are about, but you know what? You've probably already seen them a billion times already, so get over it. But anyway. So, Luke Skywalker obviously is the protagonist, a young farm boy who becomes a Jedi Knight. Now, I think originally his name was Starkiller, but anyway, it was changed to Skywalker for whatever reason, which I like Skywalker better. Princess Leia Organa was the leader in the Rebel Alliance and Luke's twin sister, separated at birth to protect them from the Emperor or the Empire knowing where they were. Han Solo was a smuggler who becomes the hero of the Rebel Alliance, or a hero rather. Darth Vader was the primary antagonist, a Sith Lord serving as Emperor. And Obi-Wan Kenobi, a Jedi Master who mentors Luke. There was Yoda, a wise Jedi Master who trains Luke. And then Emperor Palpatine, the Sith Lord and ruler of the Galactic Empire. Now, a few couple of things here. So I always make the joke in church. If Darth Vader was a preacher, what would he say? He'd say, "Turn to the book of Luke." I know it's cheesy, but it's pretty funny. Anyway, so Star Wars, now looking back with all these people that have watched the movies and noticed all these plot holes or strange things or why did this happen? How could this happen? I mean, I still love the movies. Mainly, one reason I love the movies is because of the score. John Williams is a genius when it comes to making these movie scores. Last week we talked about his work in E.T. and how that was such a wonderful score. So just the way that, just the introduction of the movie is one of the most famous things. And if you remember, if you're a Star Wars fan watching the movie, you know, it starts off with one of my favorite memories as a kid. Let's go back here. One of my favorite memories as a kid was going to the movie theater. And nowadays you just have the screen. You have there's no hype. There's no excitement really, except for when the lights dim and you know the movie's about to start. But back growing up, one of my favorite things was going to the theaters, and you sat in the theater and there was a curtain that was over the screen. You couldn't see the screen. And it was a couple different styles of curtains. Some open from the center left to right. Some open from the bottom up. But that was one of my favorite things, is that you sat there and you talked and you ate your popcorn and you visited, and it was quiet and just peaceful. And, you know, they might be playing some music overhead, and you waited and you kept looking at your watch. My gosh, when's the movie going to start? And then the lights would dim and the curtain would start to open. And man, just that excitement right there, just to see the curtain start moving, and you're thinking, "Oh, here it is! It's about to start." But you know, the commercials or the intros or previews would play at the beginning, and then it was just that black screen and those few words. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. ... And then all of a sudden, well, anyway, that's the best I could do. But that introduction was such a wonderful music piece. Man, just that fanfare. All of a sudden, it's just a wonderful, like, that introduction is one of the best, I think, that John Williams could have done. And then it had the little synopsis going into the story on the scroll that was leading away from the camera, so it looked like it was going off into the distance. Told the Star Wars. I had the little 3 paragraphs, and And you know what? It stayed that way through all these movies until I think finally the cartoon, well, not cartoon, but like CGI Star Wars, the Clone Wars come out, where it was narrated then and not where they could. Well, it was out for kids, so they probably figured that the kids couldn't read it that well, I guess. But anyway, such a great set of movies. I mean, even though there's plot holes and questions and weird things, it's just a great set of movies. Now, special effects in the original trilogy were all practical effects. And so the original trilogy set new standards for special effects, and it was a pioneering force in the development of computer-generated imagery, CGI. The merchandising Star Wars franchise revolutionized film merchandising and created a vast market for toys, books, and other products. So I remember growing up, my brother, he's 9 years older than me, I believe. He had every single one of the Star Wars little action figures. In fact, the reason I broke my left hand, if I remember correctly, was one of the Gamorrean guards, the little pig soldiers for Jabba the Hutt, was in the backyard, and we had dogs at the time. And so I thought that it was going to get chewed up by the dog, so I was trying to get it quickly. So instead of going around the house and going through our fence gate, I tried climbing over the fence, a chain link fence, and fell off and landed on my left arm or my wrist, or just to catch myself from falling. And then later that day, I fell off of our porch banister and caught myself again, but this time it broke, snapped in two, broke my arm. And when the doctor said it never grew back correctly, so I cannot turn my left arm palm up, which has messed up a lot of things that I've wanted to do in my life. I always wanted to, after I started playing music, I wanted to be a guitar player, but I couldn't play guitar properly because I couldn't turn my arm over. So I turned to piano, which is good because now I've been playing piano for the majority of my life. But after those three movies come out, the film inspired an extensive expanded universe. There were novels, comic books, animated series, and more. And this is kind of one of my problems I have with the Star Wars universe, is that once you have the story of Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, the Empire, the Emperor, once those are resolved and taken care of through episodes 1 through 9, there's not much left to do. I mean, after Return of the Jedi, I mean, the Emperor was pretty much, you thought, was killed. In 9 he comes back, but I would just assume that would have been the end of the story. Darth Vader redemption, he destroys the Emperor, and the Empire is gone. Luke Skywalker and the rebellion has come out on top, and the story is over. I don't know why George Lucas made the story that way. He had to have some kind of plan in mind because he started it with episode 4. So why wasn't there someone in George Lucas's life that said, bro, this is the dumbest idea in the world. Why don't you just start with episode 1 and tell the story? Because now what has happened is you had 4 movies, 4, 5, and 6 that used practical effects that looked very, very good back in the 70s and 80s. And then when 1, 2, and 3 come out, you had CGI, which looked newer, which didn't make any sense. I mean, my gosh. Oh, my OCD, I tell you. Just do it correctly, for crying out loud. But anyway, the original trilogy remains a cornerstone of science fiction and popular culture, continuing to influence new generations of filmmakers and audiences. So, there's a lot to be said about each movie. We're only going to stick with the original 3 right now, but in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope is what it ended up being called. it was the story about the Empire trying to find the rebels that had stolen rebel plans, or not rebel plans, but had stolen the plans of the Death Star. They were trying to get those plans back, because if they didn't get them back, they figured that the rebel people would find some kind of weakness to the base and exploit it, which they did. Okay, so how about let's build a Empire base that does not have any weaknesses to it. But anyway, one of my favorite parts in let's see, A New Hope. Well, thinking back, just the whole lightsaber introduction. The lightsabers were just they sounded neat. Just a cool weapon, a more elegant weapon for a more civilized age. And just the way that the whole story come about with like what happened to Luke's father. A young Jedi named Darth Vader killed your father. He hunted down and murdered the Jedi and all these things. And so there's so much mystery about the story there, where Obi-Wan is talking to Luke and explaining what happened. And then the tragedy where Luke's like, I can't go to take you anywhere. I got to go back home. And so they get home, and Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen have been killed by the Empire because they're looking for Luke. I guess. I'm not sure. It's kind of weird because they didn't even know it was Luke at the time. So you just start talking about these things, and you're like, well, how does this even, like, they were looking for the droids. The droids bought them from the Jawas, and the Jawas were looking for Empire was looking for the droids. So apparently they killed them because they were trying to find the droids. Unbeknownst to Luke, his dad was the one that made C-3PO. That was a weird coincidence at the and when you finally get to watch episode 1. But anyway, that's another episode for another time. Oh, Star Wars. It makes my brain hurt sometimes. So here's some interesting facts about Star Wars. The original trilogy, A New Hope, like I said, was come out in 1977. There was a lot of budget constraints. The film actually had a relatively modest budget of $11 million. But despite this, it became such a box office success. It earned over $775 million worldwide. Well, that was a nice paycheck. Like I said earlier, Luke's last name was originally Starkiller, but it was changed to Skywalker because Starkiller sounded too aggressive. That makes sense. Harrison Ford was cast as Han Solo. He was initially brought in only to read lines for actors auditioning for other roles. George Lucas eventually cast him as Han Solo because of his natural chemistry with the other actors. I mentioned this earlier as well, the opening crawl, which was the large yellow letters moving across the black background with the stars. This practical effect was challenging to achieve, but became an enduring element of the series. And what they did was I think they laid down the print and then just moved the camera over the top of it. Chewbacca's design, it was the appearance was inspired by George Lucas's dog named Indiana, which was an Alaskan Malamute. I guess that's how you pronounce it. And Chewbacca's growl, I don't know, it was in the first one, so that was from, I think George Lucas was pushing a chair across his, scooting a chair up to the table in the kitchen, and the sound of the chair sliding across the floor was what he decided sounded pretty interesting to be the sound of Chewbacca's growl. So that's pretty cool. Empire Strikes Back, like I said, came out in 1980. Now, Darth Vader's revelation, the famous line, "I am your father," was kept secret from Most of the cast and crew, and even during the filming, the script had the line, "Obi-Wan killed your father," to maintain secrecy. Only a few people knew the true line until the film's release. Also, this is part of a, what's it called, Mandela effect. A lot of people says, "I am your father." Like I just said, that's actually not the line. The actual line is, "Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father." And Luke says, "He told me enough. He told me you killed him." And then the line, the actual famous line is, "No, I am your father." Or something like that. I don't remember. Filming locations: the Ice Planet Hoth scenes were filmed in Fence, Norway. The actors and crew had to endure extremely cold conditions during the shoot. And Yoda's voice was inspired by Frank Oz, and it was puppeteered also. Now, he was known for his work with the Muppets, including characters like Miss Piggy and Fozzie Bear. Frank Oz has done a ton of voice work. Carbonite freezing, when Harrison Ford had not been yet committed to returning for the third film, so Han Solo's fate was left uncertain by him getting frozen in carbonite, which another interesting fact about this was when they were talking about Princess Leia telling Han, "I love you," and Han Solo's character, they wanted to say, "I love you back," or "I love you too." Harrison Ford assumed that the character of Han Solo would not say that, however. So he came up with the line, "I know," which was kind of a dirtbag move, but at the same time, it worked. I mean, that just fits the character. And then also the asteroid field sequence was created using practical effects and models, with each asteroid meticulously crafted by the special effects team. Return of the Jedi in 1983. The original title was Revenge of the Jedi, but if you know anything about the Force and Jedi and the Sith are always on the offense. They are the ones causing problems. Jedi were all about defense. They were all about protection, things like that. So the Jedi would not be revenging anyone. So they changed it to Return of the Jedi. George Lucas felt revenge was just not an appropriate philosophy for Jedi, which it makes perfect sense. The Ewok language was created by combining elements of Tibetan and Nepalese languages. The sound designer Ben Burt recorded and mixed these sounds to create the Ewok speech. There was a speeder bike chase scene on Endor. It was filmed by walking through the Force at a slow pace with the camera set to shoot 1 frame per second. And then when played at normal speed, it created the illusion of high-speed movement. Now, I didn't even know that. That's pretty interesting. The Jabba the Hutt puppet was a massive puppet operated by several puppeteers, and it required 3 people to control his movements and facial expressions. So I can speak a little bit of Huttese. I just remember the part where he says, "Bo Shuda," and then there's another line that says, "Ah Mama Tuta," which I think means "I'm sure." Anakin's ghost in the original theatrical release, Anakin Skywalker's ghost was portrayed by Sebastian Shaw, but in the 2004 release, Shaw's image was replaced with Hayden Christensen, who played Anakin in the prequel trilogy. This is something else that got a lot of flack from the public, was when George Lucas started changing things. One thing was the old scene of Greedo and Han Solo, and it's you can look it up. It's called the Han Shot First scene, and that's when Greedo shows up because Han Solo owed him some money. Han Solo was a smuggler, so he owed Jabba the Hutt money, and Greedo was one of the bounty hunters trying to get the money from Han Solo, if I remember correctly. And so there was the scene in the cantina where he met Luke Skywalker before they could leave, Greedo confronted him, and he's pretty much saying, you got a price on your head. You owe Jabba the Hutt some money. And so Han's like, well, look, you're going to get your money. I'm going to pay you. I just picked up another job and all this stuff. And Greedo's like, yeah, whatever. You're not going to pay, whatever. He said, or actually Greedo said, if you give it to me now, I might forget that I even saw you. And Han Solo says, well, I don't have it with me. And then Greedo says, well, Jabba's finished with you. And they have the little conversation. And, well, the scene ends with Han Solo shooting Greedo under the table. That was the original. And then as the time went on with the 2004 DVD release come out, apparently I guess some people thought that that was just too aggressive. My gosh, come on. What a bunch of snowflakes, pansies, whatever you want to call them. I don't know. Big babies. Anyway, so they changed it to where it looked like Greedo actually attacked first. So it was Han defending himself. Let me say something here. Let me speak on this for a second. I don't care what you guys say. If Han Solo was a scruffy nerf herder like Princess Leia said he was, that's exactly what he would do. He would shoot first because he was a smuggler. He was kind of not really a criminal, but he kind of was, smuggling stuff here and there for a crime lord, no less. And so, of course, he would shoot first. He's not going to get in trouble. He dropped a shipment just to keep from getting into trouble. So if he's up against a wall and he thinks that Greedo's going to shoot him, he's not going to sit there and let him shoot first. He's going to shoot him. Not that I condone that or anything, but come on. It's just a freaking movie. My gosh. Move on, America. Anyway, so that's the story of the original trilogy. And, growing up, I remember having a C-3PO carrying case for your action figures. That was pretty interesting. But, man, I tell you what. Those movies, the Force, the dark side, the light side, even though you never hear the light side, which is interesting. But I really think of it as, now, and I don't know about George Lucas, but I think of it as a parallel to Christianity, because there's the Force that surrounds us and that binds us and that penetrates us and it just holds the galaxy together. Okay? Well, that kind of describes God, because he keeps us firmly put in our place as far as like planted by the waters. He penetrates us like a two-edged sword. When the Bible, you read the Bible and it gets to you right in the core when it comes to, our sin and the things that we did, the mistakes we made. Holds us together, keeps us. I mean, that sounds like God. And then you have the dark side, which is fear, aggression, anger. Anger leads, hate. All those things lead to the dark side. And, you don't hear much about the light side. We always hear that what leads to the dark side, but we never hear what leads to the light side, which is pretty interesting when it comes to going to church, because most of the time when we go to church, that is what a preacher usually talks about, is getting out of those situations where you're dealing with your bitterness and your anger and all those things that can really turn you into, take you to the dark side, literally. But it's interesting just to parallel what happens in a Christian life. I mean, we see Anakin Skywalker start off as a good guy, using the Force for good, learning how to become a Jedi and learning all the traits of a Jedi. But then he's manipulated by the Emperor, which is at the time was Senator Palpatine. He didn't know that, but he was being persuaded by an evil force, and he backslid, so to speak. He become evil for a while, and then in Return of the Jedi, he found his way back to the light side by realizing that he was wrong, and it almost took the death of his son Luke at the hands of the Emperor to make him realize that. So it's a very interesting parallel. I don't know how anyone else feels about it, but it's pretty interesting parallel. Well, guys, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and thank you for just listening. And I really appreciate all you guys do, and thank you so much for just making me part of your night. Next week, no telling what we're going to talk about, but I will tell you one thing. You never know what's going to happen here on Spontaneous Remarks. 1 minute we're talking about Star Wars, next minute we're talking about Jesus. You never just know. But anyway, well, thank you so much. We'll catch you on the flip-flop.